Ethan was the kind of boy who always sat alone at lunch, not because he wanted to, but because he never quite fit anywhere while the other kids traded jokes about sports and music. He spent his time sketching strange symbols in his notebook and taking apart old radios he found in the trash behind the science lab. His teacher said he had a gift for understanding things. Most people did not, but gifts like that came with a price, loneliness and silence that seemed to follow him everywhere. He lived in a small town where nothing exciting ever happened, a place surrounded by thick woods and whispering winds, where people told stories about lights in the sky but no one ever proved anything. Ethan believed those stories though, not because he was gullible, but because deep down he wanted them to be true. He wanted something to break the pattern of ordinary days, something that made him feel like his endless curiosity meant more than just another failed experiment on his desk. Every day after school he walked home the long way, cutting through the woods, with his backpack bouncing on his shoulders filled with tools, a magnifying glass, and his father's old camera. He would stop at the creek, watch the ripples, and imagine tiny alien fish swimming just beyond the reflection of his face. He liked to think the universe was bigger than anyone believed, and that maybe someday he would find proof. On one particular evening the air felt different. The wind carried a smell like burning metal mixed with rain, and the sky glowed with streaks of red and blue fading behind the treetops. Ethan paused, feeling a strange vibration in the ground, like something far away had fallen. His heart started to beat faster, not with fear but with excitement, because this was exactly the kind of thing he dreamed about, the kind of thing that only happened in stories. He followed the sound deeper into the forest, the light of his flashlight cutting through the shadows, his sneakers crunching over dry leaves, each step echoing louder than the last. He felt like someone or something was watching him, but he couldn't stop, not now, not when something extraordinary might be waiting just beyond the next cluster of trees. He climbed over a fallen log and caught a glimpse of something glowing faintly between the branches. It wasn't fire, and it wasn't lightning. It was a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. His breath caught in his throat as he stepped closer, trying to stay quiet, trying not to scare whatever it was. The light flickered, then grew brighter, as if it knew he was there. Ethan whispered to himself that this was impossible, that maybe it was just his imagination playing tricks. But another part of him, the part that believed in everything the world said was impossible, told him to keep going, to find out what that light really was, because maybe, just maybe, tonight the universe was about to answer him in a way he could never forget. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped toward the strange blue light that shimmered between the trees. The air felt heavy, almost electric. Each step he took made the ground vibrate faintly, like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to come closer. His flashlight flickered once, twice, and then went out completely, leaving him standing in the dark with only that soft, unearthly glow ahead of him. He felt his pulse pounding in his ears, his throat dry, but he could not turn back, not now, not when the world had finally revealed something real, something unknown. He pushed aside a curtain of hanging vines and stepped into a small clearing. The light came from the center of it, where smoke curled up from the ground, like silver threads, weaving through the night. The smell of burnt earth and ozone filled his nose, and the hairs on his arms stood straight up. He crouched low, peering through the mist, his mind racing with thoughts of meteors, secret government drones, maybe even something alive, something that had fallen from the sky. He moved closer and saw a shallow crater about the size of a car, the edges still glowing faintly, as if heat pulsed from underneath the soil. He could hear a faint sound, a soft whimper, mixed with a metallic hum that made his chest tighten. It was not the sound of a machine, not the sound of any animal he knew. It was both and neither at the same time. He took another cautious step, then another, until he stood right at the edge, looking down into the pit. He saw made him forget how to breathe. At the bottom of the crater was a small creature tangled in chains. The chains shimmered like liquid metal, and moved slightly on their own, tightening around the creature each time it tried to pull away. The creature itself looked like a wolf, but not any kind he had ever seen. Its fur glowed with streaks of silver and blue reflecting the moonlight like ripples of water. Its eyes were open and glowing faintly, one deep green, the other bright gold, both filled with fear and pain. Ethan felt frozen. His body wanted to run, but something deeper held him there, a feeling like he was meant to find this. Like every lonely night, every strange dream, every question he ever asked about the stars had led him to this exact moment. The creature whimpered again, its voice soft but echoing in his head, as if it was speaking without words. He knelt slowly, his knees sinking into the soft dirt, and whispered that it was okay, that he would not hurt it, even though his voice shook as he spoke. The creature blinked at him, its eyes meeting his, and for a moment he felt something move inside his chest. Not fear, not even wonder, but recognition. Like he had seen it before, in a dream he could not remember. The air around them pulsed brighter and the metallic chains seemed to hum louder, as if they sensed his presence. He wanted to touch them to help, but his hand trembled inches away from the glowing metal, afraid that one wrong move might change everything. Forever he swallowed hard, his mind racing as the light around the creature flickered and the hum deepened. It looked at him again, pleading silently for help, and Ethan knew whatever this was, it was not just an animal, and this was not just a night in the woods. This was the beginning of something he could never explain. Ethan knelt at the edge of the crater, staring at the creature that looked both real and impossible. The sound it made wasn't just noise, it echoed in his head like a whisper. From somewhere far away he felt dizzy, as if the air itself was vibrating around him. The chains glowed brighter with every small movement the creature made, and each time it tried to pull free, the light rippled through the ground like waves on water. He could smell something strange in the air, not just metal or smoke, but something sweet and sharp, like the scent of lightning after a storm. He reached out his trembling hand, but stopped just short of touching the chain. His fingertips felt heat radiating from it. The metal seemed alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. He could almost swear it was watching him. The symbols etched into the surface shimmered faintly and changed shape. When he looked at them too long, he blinked, rubbed his eyes, but the symbols kept shifting like they were reacting to his presence. He whispered softly that it was okay, that he was going to help it, even though he wasn't sure how. The creature's chest rose and fell fast, its eyes locked on his. Every movement, one of them glowing gold, the other green, each blink slower than the last. It was weak, maybe dying. The thought made his stomach twist. He couldn't just leave it there, chained in the cold. Alone, whatever it was, it didn't deserve that. He took a deep breath, reached into his backpack, and pulled out a small screwdriver. The only tool he thought might help, though he had no idea what he was doing. He touched the tip of the screwdriver to the metal, and sparks jumped like blue fire. The hum in the air grew louder. His heart thudded in his chest. He jerked his hand back, shaking it out. The air smelled burned, but the creature didn't flinch. Instead it looked at him, and for a second he thought he heard words in his head, not spoken but placed there like a thought. Please help me. Ethan froze, hearing his name he hadn't spoken. It allowed. His knees went weak and his mind spun, trying to make sense of it. Whispered again, asking what it was, asking if it could understand him. The creature's eyes flickered once, then twice, and the chain tightened painfully around its neck. It whimpered, and a sudden burst of light flashed through the crater, illuminating the forest. For an instant he could see every tree, every branch, as if lightning had struck without sound. Then darkness again, only the glow of the metal and the creature's icy crawled closer this time, his fear swallowed by something stronger, maybe curiosity, maybe compassion. He didn't know. He reached out again, ignoring the heat and pain. As his fingers touched the chain, it stung, but he didn't let go. He pressed harder, and the humming sound changed its tone, softer, slower, almost calm. The creature stopped struggling, and for a second everything went silent. Even the wind stopped moving. Ethan felt his mind clear and his fear fade, replaced by a strange calm that made him forget where he was. It was just him, the creature, and the faint pulse of energy between them. Something deep inside him whispered that this moment mattered, that once he broke that chain nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan could feel the warmth of the chain through his fingertips. It wasn't the kind of heat that burned, it was alive, like it was breathing. He stared at the strange glowing symbols and saw them shifting faster, reacting to his touch. His heart pounded in his ears as the creature watched him with eyes that seemed to see straight through him. Its chest rose weakly, and Ethan could hear that strange hum again, deep and rhythmic, like a distant song carried by the wind. He wanted to understand what it meant, but his brain could barely keep up with what he was seeing. The air around the crater shimmered faintly, like invisible waves were passing through it, bending the light. The forest beyond looked distorted, melting into colors he had never seen before. Everything felt unreal, but he knew he wasn't dreaming. He whispered softly that he was going to help it, that it needed to stay still. Even though his voice trembled as he spoke, the creature blinked slowly, its eyes dimming and brightening, like it was responding to him, trusting him, even though it was terrified. Ethan pulled out his multi-tool and tried to wedge the small blade under one of the metal loops, but the metal felt smooth, like liquid, yet solid like stone. Every time he applied pressure, a shock pulsed up his arm, but he didn't stop. He could feel that the creature was fading, its breathing slowing, its glow dimming. He couldn't let it die, not when it had looked at him like that, not when it had called his name without ever speaking a word. He adjusted his grip and pushed harder. The blade slipped and sparks flew again. A faint pulse of light spread from the spot he had touched, rippling outward along the length of the chain, and then something shifted. He felt it in his bones, a vibration deep and ancient, like the earth itself had taken a breath. The creature whimpered but didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned closer as if it knew he was breaking it free. Piece by piece, Ethan's head began to ache, a sharp pulse behind his eyes as images flashed through his mind, too fast to understand. He saw stars swirling in endless darkness. He saw cities made of light. He saw a massive creature with wings of fire drifting through space, and for a second, he saw himself standing among them. The visions vanished as quickly as they came, leaving him gasping for air and gripping the chain tighter than before. When he opened his eyes again, the symbols on the metal glowed brighter than ever, then began to fade. One by one, like embers cooling after a fire, the chain loosened slightly. He realized he was winning whatever strange energy bound it was weakening. The creature looked at him again, and this time, he didn't just feel fear, he felt something else. A connection, a thread tying them together stronger with every second. The forest was silent now, no wind, no insects, only the sound of Ethan's breath and the quiet hum of the chain. He knew that once it broke, whatever was inside this creature, whatever secret it carried, would be set free. He didn't know if that was good or bad, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stop now, not when the universe itself seemed to be watching. Hemathan felt the air tighten around him like the forest itself was holding its breath. The glow from the chains flickered in waves of blue, and silver shadows danced across his face as he leaned closer, his hands trembling with exhaustion and fear. He could see the creature's sides rising and falling weakly, its fur flickering with faint light as if it were made of liquid stars. He didn't understand how something so beautiful could look so broken. The sound it made was soft but full of pain, each small breath like a whisper from a dying world. He pressed the blade of his multi-tool against the chain again, but this time something inside him shifted. He felt a rush of heat behind his eyes, and the symbols began to react faster. Spinning like tiny storms of light, the hum grew deeper, resonating through the ground, through his chest, through every cell in his body. He felt dizzy and heavy, as if the earth was pulling him down, yet he couldn't stop, not when he was so close. He gritted his teeth, pushed harder, and felt a faint click followed by a sudden stillness. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The wind stopped, the sound stopped, even the glow around them paused. Then the chain shivered like it was alive and split with a flash of light that poured through the clearing. Ethan fell backward, blinking away the brightness. His hands stung his skin, tingling from the heat. When his eyes adjusted, he saw that one section of the chain had turned to dust, scattered across the dirt, and the creature's breathing had steadied just slightly. He had done it. He had actually broken one of the links. The creature looked at him, and something invisible passed between them. He could feel it, not as words but as emotion, pure and heavy gratitude, fear, relief, all at once. It tried to move, but the remaining chains held tight, the metal digging into its legs. It whimpered again, and Ethan's heart ached. He didn't care if it was alien, or dangerous, or something he couldn't explain. He just knew it was suffering, and he couldn't walk away. He said, softly, that he would get the rest off. He promised, even if the creature didn't understand his language. He crawled closer, ignoring the ache in his arms and the pounding in his head. Each chain seemed to have its own rhythm, its own energy, the symbols pulsing like heartbeats. He placed his hand on the next one, and this time, the vision came faster, stronger. Stars exploding, endless voids filled with light, enormous creatures moving between galaxies, their eyes glowing the same gold and green as the wolf. He saw a planet covered in storms, oceans of fire, and something screaming in silence before it all faded, leaving him gasping in the dirt. The creature's eyes glowed brighter now, its strength returning, its gaze fixed on him, calm but fierce. Ethan realized that freeing it might not just save its life, it might awaken something far greater than he could imagine. He hesitated only for a moment, then lifted the tool again, his voice a whisper lost in the wind that had begun to move once more. He told the creature to hold on because he wasn't going to stop until it was free. Ethan could feel the ground vibrating beneath him, as if the earth was responding to every move he made. The glow from the broken chain still lingered in the air, drifting like smoke that refused to fade. The creature's breathing was steadier now, but its eyes never left his face. Those strange golden and green lights seemed to see everything inside him, as if it was reading his thoughts. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, his hands trembling as he reached for the next chain. The metal was colder this time, almost freezing when he touched Ethan. Symbols carved into it began to shift again, glowing brighter than before, forming shapes that looked like constellations he had seen in his astronomy books, but rearranged in patterns that made no sense. The hum in the air grew louder, until it wasn't just sound, it was inside his head. Vibrating behind his eyes, he gritted his teeth and pushed the blade beneath one of the loops. The metal resisted, pulsing with energy like it was alive, like it was testing him, daring him to try harder. He didn't know if this was bravery or foolishness, but he couldn't stop now. The creature whimpered softly, the sound echoing through his chest like a heartbeat. It wasn't fear, he could feel it. It was hope. It trusted him completely, and that scared him more than anything because he wasn't sure he could live up to that trust. He pressed harder. The chain flared with light and the ground shook so violently that the trees nearby rattled, leaves falling like rain around the crater. His body ached from the vibration, but he held his ground, his breath quick and shallow. Then the blade slipped and cut into his palm, a thin line of blood glowing faintly in the blue light. He stared at it in disbelief because the wound didn't bleed normally. It shimmered like liquid silver for a moment before fading away, as if the light itself had healed. He felt warmth rush through him, strange and comforting, and when he looked up the creature's eyes were wide, watching him, its expression soft like it had done something to protect him. Without even moving, the hum in the air changed pitch deep and low, like the forest had taken a long breath. The chain began to crack down the middle, thin streams of light leaking out, as if whatever energy had trapped the creature was finally breaking free. Ethan stepped back, shielding his eyes, as a burst of light erupted from the metal, sending a wave of warmth through the clearing. When he opened his eyes, the chain was gone, melted into the dirt like molten glass. The creature stood on shaky legs, still bound by one last piece of metal around its neck. Its fur rippled with soft blue light. It looked stronger now, its gaze steady and calm. It stepped closer to Ethan, slowly, cautiously, its movements graceful and silent. He didn't move his hands, still trembling, his mind spinning with questions that had no answers. But in that moment, he didn't care. He knew he was part of something far greater than himself, and that the night was only just beginning. Ethan felt his heartbeat pounding through his entire body as the last of the chains shimmered faintly in the dim blue light. The creature stood taller now, its fur rippling with soft waves of color, like moonlight running across water. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Every breath it took sent a faint pulse through the air, a rhythm that seemed to match his own, as if they were somehow connected. The forest around them was silent. Not even the wind dared to move. It was as if the world itself was waiting for what would happen next. The creature tilted its head and stepped closer, its paws silent on the dirt. Its eyes locked on him, deep gold and green, swirling like distant storms. He wanted to run, but something stronger held him in place, a feeling like gravity pulling him forward. He whispered that it was okay, that he wasn't going to hurt it, his voice barely audible in the heavy air. The creature blinked slowly, and he felt a rush of warmth spreading through his chest. A warmth that wasn't his own. It was like the creature was speaking without words, sending its thoughts straight into his mind. He gasped as flashes filled his vision again. Stars exploding in the darkness, galaxies swirling together. He saw a planet covered in silver forests and glowing rivers, where creatures like this one ran under 3 moons. He saw fire. He saw metal ships falling through storms. He saw chains, the same ones wrapped around the creature, forged by something dark and powerful that wanted to silence them. He stumbled backward, clutching his head as the visions came faster, his breath shallow, his heart racing. When the images finally faded, he was on his knees, the dirt cold against his palms. He looked up and saw the creature watching him, its gaze full of sorrow and understanding. He realized it had shown him everything to help him see what it truly was: not a monster, not a wild animal, but something intelligent, something ancient, something lost. He whispered that he understood, even though he wasn't sure he really did. The creature lowered its head, and for the first time he felt peace instead of fear. The last chain around its neck pulsed weakly, the symbols fading like dying embers. He reached out his shaking hand and touched it. The metal was cool, now no longer alive, no longer resisting his touch. It fell away with a soft sound like glass breaking and disappeared into the dirt. The creature was free, completely free, and in that moment the glow around them flared, brighter than ever, flooding the clearing with light that felt alive. It wrapped around Ethan, warm and weightless, filling his chest with a strange calm that pushed away every trace of fear. The creature stepped close enough that he could feel its breath, warm and steady. It pressed its forehead lightly against his, and for an instant he saw everything through its eyes: the stars, the loneliness, the endless search for safety. He realized then that it hadn't just fallen here by accident, it had been running from something, and somehow, he was now part of its story. When the light dimmed, the creature looked at him once more, and he knew something was about to change forever. The forest glowed with a faint silver mist as Ethan and the creature stood face to face, the air heavy with silence and light that seemed to breathe around them. His heart beat so fast he could barely think. The warmth from the creature's touch still burned softly through his chest. He felt weightless, like he was standing on the edge of a dream that refused to end. The creature's fur shimmered brighter now, flowing with energy that danced like liquid stars, its wounds closing before his eyes, every broken patch of skin knitting together as if time itself was reversing. Ethan wanted to speak, but no words came out. His throat felt dry and tight. He didn't know what to say. How do you talk to something that isn't from your world, that had shown you visions of places your mind could barely understand? He could only stare as the creature raised its head toward the sky, its eyes glowing fiercely, a beam of faint light shooting upward like a signal that vanished into the clouds. Above, the forest glowed. In response, trees bending slightly, as if bowing to the presence of something far greater than they could comprehend. Day-deep hum rolled through the ground again, but this time it wasn't threatening. It felt warm and alive, almost like a heartbeat spreading through the soil and into Ethan's bones. He could feel something inside him answering that pulse, as if part of the creature's power had become part of him. He looked down at his hands and saw faint blue light tracing his veins, glowing softly before fading into his skin. He wasn't afraid anymore, just filled with awe and wonder, and something deeper, a connection that words could never describe. The creature turned its gaze back to him, and for a moment he saw gratitude, deep and wordless, its thoughts brushing against his mind, like a whisper that said thank you, not in sound but in feeling. He smiled, though tears stung his eyes. He didn't know why he felt like he was saying goodbye. Even though the creature hadn't moved yet, the light around it grew stronger. A low hum filled the clearing, the air beginning to swirl, leaves lifting off the ground, spinning in a slow spiral around the Mython. Realized then that it was leaving. He didn't know how or where, but he could feel it like an instinct, a quiet understanding, that this moment was the end of something and the beginning of something else. He wanted to reach out, to stop it, to ask it to stay, but before he could, the creature lifted its head and the light around it expanded until it covered everything, the clearing, the trees, the sky, even him. He felt warmth fill him one last time before the light began to fade. When his vision cleared, the creature was gone. Only the soft blue glow remained shimmering faintly on the ground where it had stood. In the center was a mark burned into the dirt, a symbol shaped like a star, pulsing once then disappearing into darkness. Ethan stood there frozen, his heart aching but full of something new, a knowing that he would never be the same again. Ethan stood in the clearing long after the light had faded, the forest slowly returning to silence, the air still humming faintly like a song that refused to end. He could still feel the warmth on his skin where the creature had touched him, the memory of that connection burning softly in his chest. The mark on the ground glowed for a few seconds longer, then sank into the dirt, leaving only a faint outline that shimmered. When the moonlight touched it, he knelt beside it, pressing his hand to the earth, hoping to feel something, anything, but there was only the cool, damp soil beneath his fingers. He whispered the words, "Come back," even though he knew it wouldn't. The wind stirred gently, carrying the faint smell of smoke and rain, and something sweet that reminded him of the creature's presence. He looked up at the sky where the clouds had begun to part, revealing a wide stretch of stars, brighter than he had ever seen them before, each one pulsing faintly like it was alive. He wondered if the creature was out there among them, if it had made it home, or if it was still wandering, searching for safety in the endless dark. The forest no longer felt ordinary to him. Every shadow, every rustle seemed alive with energy. The trees whispered softly in the wind, and when he closed his eyes he thought he could hear faint echoes of that strange hum in the distance. He didn't know if it was real or if it was just his imagination holding on to something that had already passed, but deep down he knew the world had changed. Something had shifted in ways no one else could see. He could feel it in his bones, like gravity pulling in a new direction. As he walked home through the dark, his footsteps felt lighter, as though the ground itself had softened to let him pass. The stars above followed him between the trees, small flickers of blue light drifting through the branches like fireflies. He stopped once halfway home, when he heard a faint sound behind him, a low soft note that echoed in the air. He turned quickly, but there was nothing there, only the stillness of the night, and yet he smiled because he knew that sound. He knew it was saying goodbye in its own way. When He finally reached the edge of the woods. The horizon was turning gray with the first hint of dawn. The town below, still asleep, quiet and unaware of what had just happened. Ethan looked back one last time, the forest glowing faintly, as if it remembered to. He touched his chest where the light had once been, and felt the faint warmth still there, steady and calm. He didn't understand what he had become, or what the creature had given him, but he knew it wasn't over from. That night on Ethan was different. He saw things others couldn't, small sparks of light drifting in the corners of his vision, voices whispering softly when the stars came out sometimes. He would wake in the middle of the night and see a faint blue glow outside his window flickering like a heartbeat, and he would smile because he knew somewhere out there his friend was watching, and that one day the stars would call to him again.